Nobody plans to retire at 60, two with a wrist brace and a layoff letter, and yet that's the actual median most common way this ends for people who thought they had 8 more years to go.
Here's the number that should stop you mid-scroll. According to every newest retirement confidence survey, workers expect to retire at 65.
Retirees actually stopped working at 62. That's not a rounding error. That's a 3-year hole between the plan and the landing, and almost nobody budgets for it.
And the reason for that gap is not what you think. Most people assume early retirees quit because they finally saved enough.
The data says otherwise. A shrinking minority, under a third, leave because they're financially ready.
The rest get pushed, a health scare, a company reorg, a parent who suddenly needs full-time care. You don't pick the exit.
The exit picks you. So what happens to your plan when the calendar moves without asking your permission? I spent the last few weeks pulling apart the Every Retirement Confidence Survey, the newest Social Security Trustees Report, and current 2026 healthcare marketplace pricing. What I found wasn't one problem.
It's 3 separate systems, each one capable of quietly wrecking a retirement on its own. And all 3 are lining up in the same window for anyone currently in their 40s and 50s.
Your retirement plan isn't a prediction. It's a bet on 5 systems behaving at once. Think of your retirement number like a highway sign that tells you how many miles of gas you've got left.
The number looks solid, it looks reassuring, but that gauge has a documented blind spot. It doesn't account for anyone else touching the wheel.
Not your health, not your employer, not Congress.
And right past where the sign stops updating, there's a stretch of road nobody warned you about. The years after you stop earning and before Medicare kicks in.
Let me walk you through someone I'll call Owen. 50, 4 years old, an operations manager. $260,000 saved. 11 years until his target date of 65.
On paper, flawless. His spreadsheet said he'd get there. His wife trusted the timeline. Then at 57, Owen tore a rotator cuff moving furniture, nothing dramatic, just an ordinary accident. 4 months out of the field, while he was recovering, his company quietly restructured his department.
He came back to a demotion dressed up as a lateral transfer, 15% less pay, same title, different reality.
He adjusted the spreadsheet again. 11 years became 14. 18 months after that, a second layoff wave caught him directly.
He was 59. He had roughly a year of savings outside his retirement accounts, and his 401k wasn't touchable without penalty for another 18 months.
Owen's math was never wrong. What was wrong was the assumption baked underneath the math that nothing would interrupt the timeline before it finished.
Something always can. Here's the part almost nobody talks about, and it's brutal because it hits exactly when you're most exposed. Call it the triple squeeze because 3 separate costs converge in the same narrow window, right when you've just lost your paycheck and your portfolio is at its most fragile.
First, the health coverage gap. This is the stretch between whenever you actually stop working, statistically, 62, and when Medicare starts at 65.
3 years unprotected, and 2026 makes this dramatically worse than it used to be.
The extra premium tax credits that had capped Affordable Care Act costs since 2021 expired at the end of 2025 and were not renewed.
That means the old subsidy cliff at 400% of the federal poverty line is back in force.
Anyone above that line now pays full freight for marketplace coverage.
According to KFF's most recent modeling, unsubsidized annual premiums for affected households have roughly doubled year over year, and someone in their early 60s buying an individual plan can
easily be looking at over $1,000 a month before a single co-pay.
That's $12,000 to $14,000 a year per person, on top of everything else. Money most retirement calculators never even ask about.
The bill nobody plans for is the one that arrives the moment the paycheck stops. Second cost, Social Security timing.
Claim at 60, instead of waiting for full retirement age. and your check is permanently reduced, not temporarily, permanently for the rest of your life.
Wait past full retirement age up to 70, and the Social Security Administration adds roughly 8% a year, guaranteed, no market risk attached.
There is nothing else in personal finance that offers a legally locked 8% annual increase just for patients.
And yet the majority of early claimants take the smaller check anyway, because when the paycheck disappears, the smaller income now beats bigger income later.
Every single time, even when the math says otherwise. Is that a plan, or is that just what happens when there's no runway left?
Third cost, the years of contributions and compounding you never get to make. Picture someone earning 6 figures who planned 5 more years of max, stout contributions before their target date.
Those 5 years, roughly $90,000 in raw contributions, would have compounded into well over $100,000 by the time they were needed.
Forced out early, that money simply never exists.
Layer on the compounding loss from the balance they already had, and a 5-year early eggs, it can quietly erase a couple $100,000 of eventual portfolio value money that would have
funded a meaningfully larger paycheck every single year for the rest of retirement.
So here's the summary of the squeeze. Unbudgeted healthcare premiums in the first 3 years, a permanently smaller Social Security check if you claim early out of necessity, and age.
5-figure to 6-figure compounding gap from years you thought you had and didn't. None of these 3 show up automatically in a standard retirement calculator.
That's not the calculator's fault, exactly, it's just answering the question you asked it. The problem is you asked it the wrong question.
Now let's talk about the 4% rule, because most people treat it like gospel, and it was never meant to be.
It came out of research in the mid-90s, later formalized by academics at a Texas university, and the finding was that withdrawing 4% of a balanced portfolio in year 1, then adjusting for inflation every year after, survived a 30-year retirement in roughly 95% of historical scenarios.
Sounds airtight. Here's the catch nobody puts in the headline. That number assumes a 30-year retirement starting on schedule.
Retire 5 years early, and you're not funding 30 years, you're funding 30, 5 or more. Researchers now suggest a lower, more conservative withdrawal rate for anyone with that longer runway, sometimes closer to 3.5% instead of 4%. On a moderate 6-figure portfolio, that gap between 3.5% and 4% works out to thousands of dollars less income every single year for decades.
A plan built for 30 years quietly breaks when you actually need it to cover 35, and the sequence matters as much as the average.
If the market drops hard in your first couple of years of withdrawals, you're selling a much bigger slice of a much smaller account, and that damage can be close to permanent, even if the following decade rebounds beautifully. It's not the 30-year average that sinks people. It's the first 5 years at the worst possible moment.
There's also a generational layer to this that makes the timing especially sharp.
Every research group tracking this says the same thing. The generation currently in their late 40s through late 50s has the least pension coverage of any working generation in modern
history, the largest self-reported gap between what they've saved and what they think they'll need. And this is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Many of them hit full retirement age in
the exact stretch of years. The Social Security trustees now project the retirement trust fund reserves running dry.
The most recent trustees report moved that projected date to late 2032. If Congress takes no action before then, scheduled benefits get an automatic cut of roughly 22%.
That's not a distant hypothetical on a government PDF. For a lot of viewers watching this right now, that's inside your actual retirement window.
Now I know that's a lot of bad news back to back, so let's breathe for a second.
There's an entire industry of advisors who will tell you Congress always fixes Social Security eventually, and historically they've been right. It happened in the early 80s under
Pressure, that's a reasonable bet. It is not, however, a strategy. Hope is not a line item on a spreadsheet.
Let's go back to Owen for a second, because the ending matters more than the crisis. He didn't overhaul his entire financial life. Most people don't, and that's fine.
He did two specific things. He bumped his contribution rate up just enough to fully capture his employer match, which he'd been leaving on the table for 2 years without realizing it.
And he opened a separate account he labeled, plainly, Bridge Fund, $300 a month, earmarked purely for the years between an early exit and Medicare eligibility.
It won't cover the whole gap. That was never the point.
The point is, he built a shock absorber into the plan before the shock arrived, instead of discovering the gap the hard way mid-crisis with no cushion at all.
So here's what I actually want you to do this week, not eventually, this week.
First, rerun your numbers assuming you stop working at 60. 2, not 67, and use a withdrawal rate closer to 3.5% instead of 4 to account for the longer runway.
If you can't do that calculation in 10 minutes, that's the homework, full stop.
Second, build an explicit health care line item into your plan for the years before Medicare. Budget somewhere around $12,000 to $14,000 a year per person for 2026 marketplace.
Pricing, and understand that number only grows with healthcare inflation.
Third, treat the decision of when to claim Social Security as a locked-in, guaranteed return decision, not a I'll take it whenever I need it.
Afterthought, because delaying it is the closest thing to a risk. Free return this country's financial system has ever offered you.
The safest retirement plan is the one built for the version of you that didn't get to choose the exit date.
None of this means panic. It means building the plan for the version of the timeline that actually shows up for most people, not the version on the slide deck.
If you found this useful, hit like. It genuinely helps more people see it. And if you want more breakdowns like this one, that's exactly what we do here on Winds of Thought. Stick around. Subscribe if it's your first time here. And I'll see you in the next one.